Hi guys, welcome back to Lex Alexis. We are carrying on the series of me talking through my thoughts of the current Championship 24-25 season, and I'm going to give you my thoughts of the current race to the playoffs, because there is a large cluster of teams who are fighting for at least the 5th and the 6th place in the playoffs. I'm going to be talking roughly 6 teams who I think could realistically still get into that position in the Championship, and the fact it's 2 spaces just makes it a lot more open than it should be as well. So I'm really excited again. I'm going to look through the run-in, I'm going to give you my thoughts and how the teams have been performing up to this stage of the season, and giving my pros and cons on their chances of getting into the playoffs. Every side in the Championship will want to get into the playoffs. Everyone would want to get that opportunity to try and potentially get into the Premier League. So I will be going through all of that. And at the end, I'll give you the 2 teams who I think could finish 5th and 6th place and guarantee those last 2 playoff places. If you guys like what you see, please smash the like button. It really does help the growth of this channel. Please do hit the subscribe button too. It really does help the growth of the channel. And please share the channel. 2 or 3 of these things are free to do, and they really help. But without any further ado, let's start giving my thoughts on the current playoff race in the Championship. So the playoff race is massive. If we go back to the capture, this is the current Championship table in the playoff region. I have included Sunderland right near the top on 69 points, but I could almost safely say that Sunderland have got that playoff place secured. If you're looking at the first team outside of the playoffs, that's Bristol City with 57 points. 12 points below Sunderland. In equivalent, that is Sunderland losing 4 in a row and Bristol City winning 4 in a row, and then they match Sunderland for points. And even with that, we only have 8 games left to remind you that all of these sides are going to have to play. So Sunderland could even just win half of their remaining 8 games and they will still likely get into the playoffs. So they are in a really privileged position, Sunderland. So I already gave you my thoughts of Sunderland in yesterday's video, so if you do want to see my thoughts of Sunderland, please do check that video out. So I won't regurgitate my thoughts on Sunderland. I've given you my thoughts on the run-in, but we are today going to talk about the teams below Sunderland, and you can see for 5th and 6th place, it is a whole lot more competitive. Only 8 points separate 5th all the way down to 12th place. And I think those are going to be the teams. I mean, I did say 6. I might as well include Millwall and Sheffield Wednesday to the conversation as well. So that is 8 teams that we're going to be speaking about. But we'll go in order of appearance currently in terms of the table. So Coventry will be the first team we talk about. I mean, what a massive turnaround it has been for Coventry, considering back in November they were within the bottom 6 of the Championship. Now they're within the top 6. It does show you within a couple of months, when you have a good run in form, you can turn your season around, even though you may only be playing at your full potential for only half of the games in that season. 17 wins with 8 draws and 13 defeats. A near perfect form going into the international break. That 1 defeat was against Derby County, a midweek game which did turn out to be a little bit of a shocker, but a brilliant bounce back performance for Coventry by beating Sunderland, a playoff rival and literally just above them in the table, by 3-0. If we now look at their next couple of games, you can see here, I would not want to be a Coventry City fan looking at those 2 games. You've got Sheffield United and Burnley to remind you. I mean, if you've not seen yesterday's video, they are the 2 sides chasing Leeds United for this automatic promotion place. So I do think it's two very tough games for Coventry back to back. They'll be grateful that they have a week to prepare for both of them, but I can't decide which one is harder than the other. Sheffield United have been good at home. Burnley, of course, have lost the least games out of any side in the Championship, so it's really going to be a tough one for Coventry. And you could see a situation where Coventry may only pick up 1 point or not even pick up any points in their next 2 games. That will still see them on 59 points. But with any luck, they still might remain in the top 6 despite that. But obviously the likes of Bristol City can take advantage. Middlesbrough could only match Coventry's points, in the worst case scenario in that case. And West Brom could potentially overtake Coventry in that front. So those are the couple of sides that Coventry would need to think about, and they would have to hope that they do not pick up good results and overtake them in the process when they have those 2 tough games. Obviously, Coventry could beat those 2 teams, and it would be amazing if Coventry can, and they will certainly cement themselves as the favourites of getting through to the Premier League via the playoffs if they can get those results. Their final 6 games looks like this. Portsmouth at home, I think Coventry could get a win there. Portsmouth, I believe at that time, will have enough of a gap to feel safe from the drop. I've not seen Portsmouth's games, but I will see their running when I cover the relegated threatened sides. Hull away. Hull have actually got the worst home form in the league, so I think Coventry could get a result there. West Brom at home, tough one. They're literally right below them in the table, but certainly Coventry, with how good they've been at home, they can back themselves. Plymouth away, is this going to be a little bit like a Derby County where Plymouth fight for their lives and Plymouth could potentially get a win and Coventry slip up? Quite possibly. That actually might be a really tough game for Coventry. And then that's followed by another away game against another relegated threatened side in Luton Town. So those 2 games are pretty pivotal. So you've got Sheffield United and Burnley, right near the top back-to-back, and you've got the bottom 2, or current bottom 2, I should emphasise, Plymouth and Luton being played back-to-back. Both of these sides could either be in a demoralising position, either one of these sides could find themselves in a position where they're automatically relegated by this point of the season. But if both of these sides are still fighting and are still not mathematically down, that automatically makes that game really, really tough for Coventry. Then ending it with Middlesbrough, it's going to be really down to what Middlesbrough's running is. If Middlesbrough are fighting for top 6 and need to get a result to get something there, it could be tough for Coventry. So I think whilst a lot of their games I think are pretty winnable, I think actually this period here is quite nice. And then whilst those 2 games, Plymouth and Luton, are right on paper, you cannot underestimate the struggle that Coventry could have for both being away games back to back, but both being from sides who will be desperate to try and survive a drop in the bottom 2 of Plymouth and Luton. So I do think on the whole, I think Coventry could pick up at least 4 wins out of their last 8, if not more. And with that points tally, that gives them... So can't do the maths at the moment. I'll give them around 74 points. I think if you get 70 plus points, I do think that secures you a top 6 place. So maybe even only 4 wins Coventry might need. And I did say, in looking at their games, I do spot 4 good games that Coventry could pick up wins with. I think Coventry might actually be okay, just from the little cushion that they have already from the chasing sides. Let's jump into West Brom now, and let's look at their chances. So West Brom certainly getting some more consistency. I'm a little bit concerned with those draws. I think the Hull City draw especially was a little bit surprising. But then getting that draw against Burnley and Leeds recently were 2 brilliant results. And it's going to show that any side playing West Brom is going to be a tough game. Norwich is a very interesting game for me. Norwich, for me, are one of the very few sides who I don't think have a lot to play for. I mean, there is an argument you could chuck Norwich in the conversation of getting into the top 6, but realistically, when you are 8 points behind at this stage with 8 games left, they have to be near flawless, and they're winless in 4. Unless they can really turn on their form after this international break, I just don't see it, unfortunately. Then it's Sunderland, which we spoke about yesterday. It's a big game, actually. And it'll be interesting to see which one gets a result. Obviously, it's 6th going up against 4th place, so that could potentially very well be a playoff game that we might actually see in the real life playoffs soon. Then you've got another side fighting for top 6 in Bristol City away. Watford, I have included them still in the conversation, only just for the top 6. That one could be interesting. Coventry away, probably one of the tougher games to play. Then it's Derby at home, and Derby a bit similar to the likes of Plymouth and Luton. We're still uncertain how many points they're going to be at this stage. It could be a case where they really need to try and pick up some wins at this point, and that can make things tough. Then it's followed by Cardiff and Luton. So whilst those 3 sides that end off West Brom's last couple of games are very low down the table, it could be made tougher with the fact that they could all still be fighting for survival at this stage of the season. So I think that's one big part of it, but I do think their home games are relatively nice. I do think that is a big part of West Brom's success. It is their home form. And I think, again, with Coventry, I think there's enough winnable games for West Brom that they can get some really good results out of it. And I think, again, if they pick up 4 wins, they'll get to 69 points. Maybe they might want to get 1 more win just to secure it. I think low 70s is really going to be the requirement here, considering that they're under 60, 5th place, with only 8 games left. It is telling you the amount of points to get into the final playoff places is a little bit lower than normal, to be honest. Bristol City's next. It's lovely we're talking about Bristol City at this stage of the season fighting for the playoffs. I would love to see them get there. Only 9 defeats all season. You know, that's only 2 more than what West Brom, and way less than Coventry, may I add as well. They are in a position where they are only outside of the top 6 by goal difference. But what concerns me is not only do they have an away game against Burnley, and I know they've got a home game against Watford, I'm also pointing an attention, they've also got an away game against Leeds. And I do think that's going to be a bridge too far for them. Bristol City's away form, I don't think is as strong as their home form. And I think with their other away games, they've got, Luton. We've already said already, if Luton are scrapping for their last, that could be tough. I think QPR might be an okay one. If QPR find themselves enough points away from the relegation zone at this stage of the season, this could be a good time to play QPR. Then with their home games, you know, more playoff sides. West Brom, Sunderland, that's a very tough run-in for Bristol City. But if they can overcome it and still get into the top 6 with those games, it gives them a really good amount of confidence that they could tough it up against the very best sides in the league. And that will give them a whole new brain of confidence of getting into the top 6. They end their game with Preston. They used to not really have a good record against Preston. Their form has actually improved against Preston in recent years, and I think they could potentially end the season on a high. I think, again, I'm looking at 3 wins maybe, but it's going to be a toughie. It really is, because I do think Coventry and West Brom have enough winnable games that they can really put themselves in a big gap. And I think there's at least 2 games where I think Bristol City could find themselves short in. And I think you don't really want to be putting games down as 2 guaranteed games where Bristol City, I believe, won't get results. And I just think it's just going to be too difficult. So now we're going to talk through the teams who I just think have an outside chance of getting in. So Middlesbrough, who are 3 points behind, so maybe a bit unfair for me to say an outside chance, but they still are relying for many results to go in their favour. They start off with Oxford, which I think is a very winnable game. Then Blackburn away, which position-wise may be one of the higher teams they've got to face. But you see with that form there, 4 defeats and 5, might be a really good time to play Blackburn. But then that's followed by Leeds. Tough game. Then Millwall away, never an easy game. Plymouth at home, I think they can get a result. Sheffield Wednesday away. Now, I do think that game could be quite pivotal. Because remembering the run-ins, I don't think Sheffield Wednesday's run-in is that bad. But I'm looking definitely at this last game against Coventry thinking, oh, now this could be crucial as well. So Middlesbrough's last 2 away games, Coventry and Sheffield Wednesday, I think will be very pivotal to determine whether they will get into the top 6 or not. Personally, there are a good amount of winnable games, but it's just the question of, can Middlesbrough make up some ground and get a couple of shock results and climb themselves back into the top 6. Their goal difference is not too bad. They can certainly build from it, but West Brom have got a big advantage on that. So whilst Middlesbrough may get a win over West Brom at one game week, they'll still be below them despite being tied on points due to the goal difference unless a big goal swing happens. So those little details are worth noting when deciding which team will be going to the playoffs. What a massive fall from grace it's been from Blackburn. I mean, with those 16 defeats, a quarter of their defeats have all season have all happened in their last 5 games. It's really, really sad to see the decline of Blackburn, considering they were flirting with the playoffs for most of the season, and obviously we know the story of John Eustace departing Blackburn in the end. It's just been a mess on the pitch now, but it's always been a mess off the pitch, and I just feel really sorry for Blackburn personally. Their form looks like this. Portsmouth away, I think tough, because Portsmouth at home have really turned a corner. Then Middlesbrough will be desperate to try and get to the top 6, and you just think with their current form, you just don't see any confidence in this Blackburn side that they will pick up a win anytime soon. That's then followed by another playoff rival in Sheffield Wednesday. Luton, I think, could be tough. Then you've got Millwall at home, another playoff rival. Then that followed by Sunderland, then Watford, and then Sheffield United. So I certainly think the last 4 games for Blackburn are not particularly enjoyable, especially their last 2 away games against Sunderland and Sheffield United respectively. I think the way that the tide is going and how the momentum is flowing, I just think there's just going to be too much for Blackburn to do. It's already a 5-point gap to get into the top 6, and that could easily extend if they do get a result against Portsmouth as well. I just think Blackburn have now given themselves too much to do, sadly. We're now going to look at Watford, where Watford's season started off amazingly, and then it's just kind of petered off a bit, and now they've sort of settled in this mid-table position. And Watford fans, let me know what you think of your season up to this point. So points-wise, they're on 52, same as Blackburn. They are 5 points off the playoffs. Plymouth to start things off, I actually think it's a good place to start. But then it's Bristol City away. It's a huge game. So if they do beat Bristol City, I don't think it means that they overtake them with points, but it does mean that if they match their results in their previous game, Watford can close the gap on Bristol City by 2 points. So that makes things a little bit interesting with the race to the playoffs there, and I'm glad that we've actually got a lot of the playoff chasing sides playing up against each other, because it's going to throw a lot of twists and turns in the current, thoughts in terms of sides guaranteeing those playoff places. It's then followed by Hull. I thought could be an okay game. West Brom away is tough. Then they've got Burnley here. Definitely their tougher games so far. Portsmouth away I think is a bit tricky. Blackburn, I think they could actually get a result. And then it's ended with Sheffield Wednesday. So average position wise, you're seeing loads of sides chasing the playoffs, and I think the teams outside of the playoffs, your Portsmouths away, and then your Burnley's at home, which, I'm assuming Burnley could potentially be in the top 2 at this stage. Those are all tough games, so I do think Watford have it a little bit tough, but I do think with my view with Watford, because of their inconsistency with their form, you do think that with one of their performances they could really push on. I just don't see enough for me at this stage that they can sustain that pressure, and that has been for a lot of the playoff chasing sides. They've been relatively inconsistent with their form, hence why the points at this stage for 5th down to 12th is quite low at this stage of the season. Considering Birmingham got relegated with, I believe, was it 51 or 52 points, and Sheffield Wednesday have not even matched those points yet with 8 games left, does tell you, that region of the table has actually scored a lot lower points this year, which makes it a whole lot entertaining, but it does mean the sides around them have been a bit more inconsistent. And if we're talking about inconsistency, we can certainly talk about Millwall here. Look at that, a win followed by a defeat, and so on and so forth. That has been their form in the past 5 games or so. And their form nearly is directly split across the middle. If their next game ends in a draw, that would look quite oddly satisfying to have 13 wins, 13 draws and 13 defeats. And Sunderland could be a game they could very well draw. I mean, I don't know, maybe leaning more to a Sunderland win, but certainly they could draw it. I do think that is a very tough game for Mill to start things off. Portsmouth at home, I think they can get a result, but you've got to remember again, look at the points they've got. They've got 51 points. They are in a position where they're 6 points off playoffs. And for me, when you've got a large gap to breach, you have got to make a fast start. And I do think Sunderland away is not the ideal game for Millwall to try and get a fast start. So if we then look into the last 6 games for Millwall, oh dear, Sheffield United and Burnley. So a bit similar with Bristol City. They've got to face 3 of the current top 4 in their last 8 games of the season. So Bristol City and Millwall have got it really tough with their running. Then that's followed by a home game against Middlesbrough. Could really go either way. Blackburn away, I think, could be okay. Millwall at home, Norwich at home, sorry. I actually think might be okay for Millwall. And then Swansea at home, depending where they are, I think with the points cushion they've got from the relegation threatened sides, I think Swansea won't have really anything to play off. So I think majority of their home games are okay. It's just their away games that are really, really savage. So I can really only see them maybe only winning 1 of their away games, and their home games, maybe they can win half of them. So that gives you 3 wins. That only puts you up to 60, and ultimately West Brom and Coventry only need to win 1 of their last 8 to get into that position. So you can understand my reasoning of Millwall not really being backed for the top 6. Personally, in my opinion, maybe we could see a crazy turnaround. Sheffield Wednesday really does interest me. So they're also on 51 points, and they did sustain a defeat against Sheffield United in the Steel City derby. For that times they looked okay, but ultimately they just were quite wasteful and they were quite ineffective in the second half, unfortunately. But they've got a really good manager in Danny Rowe, and they have got a talented squad that can make things happen. Now the running. Cardiff away, followed by Hull at home. I think 2 sides that are both fighting for survival, both just outside of the bottom 3, which could make things tricky, but ultimately if Sheffield Wednesday do play their cards right, they could get a good result from both of those games. And in the last 6, Blackburn away, I think, as I've mentioned already, the form for Blackburn does encourage me that Sheffield Wednesday can get a result. Oxford at home, Oxford not been good on the road, so I think they can get 3 points there. Stoke away, interesting. Stoke may still be in a position fighting for relegation, but could, again, if they play their cards right, get a result. Middlesbrough, I'm noticing Middlesbrough playing a lot of sides chasing for the playoffs, but I do think Sheffield Wednesday could get something. Portsmouth at home, Portsmouth's away form's not been great. And then Watford to end it off. So I think the home games for Sheffield Wednesday are actually quite nice. And considering for Sheffield Wednesday's point of view, if we look at their home performance, it is actually really, really bad. Look at that, right near the bottom. But they're also facing sides that have perennial struggles on the road. Oxford, poor on the road. And Portsmouth also poor on the road as well. Middlesbrough may be the one exception to that, but ultimately, I do think with the size that Sheffield Wednesday still have to play at home, they can get results in those. And definitely their tougher tests are away from home. But look at that, Sheffield Wednesday are up to 5th in the away form table. So I do think the tough, potentially gritty games that they could have against Stoke and Watford could potentially be ones that they can find a way to get a win. It does interest me with how each team can actually play a little bit differently from home or away. So that is kind of my round off view with the playoffs. So it is 8 sides. Let's now go back to the main capture. And now let's give you my predictions on who I think will finish 5th and 6th. It's a tough one, but 5th place, and I might be very boring, I think it's going to be Coventry. I think they will secure 5th place. They've got already a 2-point cushion from all the other 7 sides at least. So they could potentially have one blip, but then that could be rectified if they carry on in the form that they're showing. And for me, the other side in the playoffs is West Brom. I do think West Brom have enough winnable games, especially at home, that could carry them enough of a higher points tally that will secure the playoffs. I think Bristol City for me would be the side that just misses out. I do think they have 2 very tough games with Burnley and of course Leeds, and then they also play against Sunderland, I believe, as well. So it's a tough running for Bristol City, and it ultimately will test them to see if they can get into the top 6. Certainly would like them to, but I'm not too sure if they will. I think they'll get really, really close though. But I'm going to highlight another team to watch out for. Maybe a shot, but Sheffield Wednesday, as I've just made my point very clear, I think their games, home and away, Sheffield Wednesday could go on a good form. That's basically what I'm trying to say. But the thing is with them, again, a bit similar with the Watford and the Millwalls, they have not been entirely consistent the whole way through this season. So realistically, whilst I do think Sheffield Wednesday is an important team to observe based on how realistic their form looks in trying to pick up some positive momentum, I think the current 2 teams in the playoffs will end up finishing in the playoffs. I know that sounds really, really boring, but personally, I just think they've got enough good games that they could get enough points from. Obviously, one of these sides could go on a terrible run of form and could prove me wrong. And ultimately, likewise, with the top 3, I could be entirely wrong with this. But playing it a little bit safe, I mixed things up a little bit in terms of my predictions for the top 3, spoiler alert. But I think here, whilst there's lots of teams going for those playoff places, it has had this feeling that a lot of the sides being given a chance of getting to the top 6 just keep their eye off the ball in the wrong moments of their season. And I just think both of these sides already in the playoffs, I think have already done enough consistency and enough at this stage of the season to secure those places personally. But 8 points separating 5th and 12th, I love how competitive it is. And that is why, in my opinion, the Championship is the best league in the world. So that wraps up my views of the playoff race. Let me know, guys, of who you think will finish in the playoffs in the comments down below. Could Sunderland maybe drop out of the playoffs? Who knows? But will we see the current top 6 or the current 4 teams in the playoffs stay there to the end of the season? Let me know, and let me know which one of your sides could potentially sneak in. And I'm certainly bringing the attention to Bristol City based on how well they've done at this stage. And of course Sheffield Wednesday because of their run-in. Maybe Middlesbrough could creep in, but I don't know. I've just seen a lot of Middlesbrough to the point where they're just, I think, a bit too inconsistent personally. But who knows? We can only just wait and find out to see how the last 8 games for each Championship side unfolds. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please do smash the like button. It really does help the growth of this channel. Please do hit the subscribe button too. And please share the channel too. All 3 of these things are free to do and they really do help. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are legendary for joining in this video. And as always, I'll see you guys soon. Take care, everyone.